Alrighty, and we are back. So, the next thing that we want to work on is a bunch of more edge casey or validation related stuff for purchasing available sponsorship slots. So I think the first thing that I would like to look at, there's a bunch of things that we could look at, but the thing that sticks out to me the most on the code that we have currently is there's this nasty hard-coded string, which is obviously not a real payment token, yet somehow we're able to make charges. So let's add a test that proves that you must use a valid payment token. So I'm going to copy this whole big test. And we're probably going to trim it down quite a bit, but we'll start from here. So we're going to have a fake payment gateway. We're going to have a podcast. I don't think we're going to need a name this time because there's not going to be a charge. I don't think we need... And we'll keep the prices just to prove that they're not priced at $0 because that's going to be useful for validating that no charges were created. And yeah, so we're going to use supply an email, a company name. Why don't we simplify this and maybe just purchase one slot? And we will provide let's call it a payment token or something. And we'll just do not a valid token. And I guess we'll do a 422. I think that's Laravel's default validation one, which I think is, unprocessable entity. I don't know, seems fine. And let's start by asserting that no sponsorships were created. So that means we can get rid of this stuff. Let's assert that slot A still has a null sponsorship ID, so it wasn't actually claimed as sponsored. And I guess we'll just rename slot A to be slot. Maybe we can trim this down a little bit. We want to make sure that no charges were made. Okay, so you can see this test is already a lot simpler than the other one. So let's run this and see what we get. Okay, we got to give it a new name. So a valid payment token is required. We'll call this test. Okay, expected 422, but received 201. So the problem that we are seeing is that the payment gateway, it doesn't reject charges that are made with an invalid token. So I think what we should do is drop down to the unit level for the fake and drive out this functionality there. And then this test should kind of just start passing by default. So let's duplicate this test and it'll get trimmed down again. And we'll just probably name it pretty similar. Valid payment, what do we say? A valid payment token? Yeah. We'll just say charging requires a valid payment token. Okay, so we'll just do this first charge. I kind of feel like I want these to have periods at the end. Do I? No. So instead of passing through valid test token that we get from the payment gateway, we'll say invalid test or payment token. And we'll assert count 0 on charges. And this will be one of those situations where I think we should probably throw an exception for trying to charge with an invalid token. So I think what we'll do, this is a good example of when it's useful to do that try catch setup that I was talking about before. So what should the exception be? Payment failed exception. Something like that. So we'll attempt to charge up in here. And we'll fail with a message saying the charge succeeded even though the payment token was invalid. And then these assertions we'll have to put in the catch. So this is what I meant when I said, like, sometimes it's useful to have this try catch setup when you're testing stuff that should throw exceptions. Because in this case, I want to make sure that, yes, it fails and the charge doesn't go through, but I really want to double check that by making sure that, the charge count comes back as 0 sort of thing. Okay, so let's run it and see what we got. Charge succeeded even though the payment token was invalid. So let's go to our fake payment gateway. And all we need to do here really is just double check if token does not triple equal this valid test token. We'll just assume that like there's only one type of valid test token for now. In more complex applications I've built, I've written fakes like this where each time you call this method, it generates a new random test token and stores it in state so that you can make multiple charges that have different tokens and that sort of thing. But in this case, we don't have to worry about that yet, I don't think. So we'll throw a new payment failed exception. And this is going to fail, I think, because we don't have that exception defined. So let's jump up to exceptions. We'll say payment failed exception.php. Okay, so PHP namespace app exceptions class payment failed exception extends. I guess it's a runtime exception. And it's empty, which is fine. What am I doing here? I'm going to run this test. Water. Yeah, my voice is getting worn out a little bit, but I'm also sick, so. Okay. Let's make sure that we import that here and here. Okay, so that's green. So you can't make a charge without a valid token. So now if we run this test, I think this one will pass now. No, probably because we create the sponsorship too early or something. A payment failed exception is thrown here. So actually what we need to do is we need to handle that in the controller. So why don't we start by, we'll wrap the whole thing in a try catch and then we can decide if some stuff we don't want to be in here. This is always interesting because it's actually hard to, if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to go look at some other code to be sure, but it's kind of hard to validate a payment token and make sure that it's chargeable without trying to charge it. Which means that I'm going to end up doing some validation for the email, company name, that sort of stuff first. And if that stuff, if someone's email is wrong and their token is wrong, I'm going to have a hard time combining those errors. I'd have to do some weird stuff to do that. So I think we just have to kind of not stress about that probably. Because there's other reasons a payment could fail anyways. Okay, so a payment failed exception. And if the payment fails, then for now, let's just return a JSON response that's empty with 422. Exception handler. What's the Laravel format these days for JSON errors? So it's a message and then errors. And I think errors is sort of keyed by some stuff. So if we wanted to, we could write an assertion about this. That's probably a good idea. Is it a good idea? I don't know if I really care about specifying the errors explicitly. I don't care right now. Let's just put it that way. Or at least I don't care about testing it. It's kind of just like informational, so I don't really care that we see like an exact sentence. All I really care about is the code from a TDD perspective anyways. Failed asserting that 1 matches expected 0. So now we're into some interesting stuff because we want to make sure no sponsorships were created. Assuming that was the error. Was it 79? Yeah. So a sponsorship was created even though the payment failed. So this is kind of interesting because this test is going to like basically force us to do some of this stuff in the right order now, which is kind of cool. So we want to make sure that we call charge before we try to create the sponsorship. We only want to create the sponsorship if the charge succeeded, right? So now if we head back here, we should be back to green. But if we run the whole file, I think we'll be, failing. Because in the first test, we don't use a valid test token. Like we provide no token. So let's make sure that we provide a payment token here. And we'll make sure that we get it from the payment gateway. So we'll say payment gateway, valid test token. Hate being sick. All right. Expected status code 201, but received 422. So that's interesting. So let's think about why that would be. So we're passing through a valid token. Oh yeah, sorry, duh. We need to get the token from the request. Okay, green. That feels worthy of a commit to me. Okay, so we'll just say test that charges require a valid payment token. All right, cool. All right, let's check our to-do list here. So we did Stripe token must be, or payment token must be valid. Let's cut this out and throw this up here. Slots must belong to the current sponsorable. Actually, you know what? Let's do simple validation first. Company name is required. Email address is required. We'll do payment token is required. And yeah, okay. So let's rename this to payment token. Let's say sponsorship is not created if payment token cannot be charged. That's kind of like the real error here. So we'll duplicate this and we'll just do some simple validation stuff now. So we'll say company name is required. Is required. So I think it's fine to keep the stuff kind of set up the way it is here. We'll pass through empty string as a company name because I think that's what's going to happen with the JSON requests in Laravel. But we could try it both ways. And we'll say payment gateway, valid test token. And I think we just want to say response, is it assert, response. So where's the error stuff? Is there error stuff? Oh, this is wrong. Test response. Assert session has errors. Assert JSON validation errors. Assert that the response has the given JSON validation for the given keys. Cool, so that seems useful. think that's kind of a new one. I haven't used this one before. Assert JSON validation errors, and is it a key? It's an array of keys, or you can pass through a single key. You can pass through a single key. Company name. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll make sure that no sponsorships are created, sponsorship ID is not set, and no charges happened. Okay, so integrity constraint violation. So sponsorships.company name, I guess, is being converted to null by Laravel's middleware, which is useful. So I'm glad that we decided to use an empty string here. Seems like the right test case. So let's start by just doing request, validate, and we'll validate that company name is required. That'll be our first step here. So what do we end up with here? The given data was invalid. That's no problem. So that means we just want to do with exception handling, since we're relying on Laravel's exception handling in this case. Okay, so that's green. I'd be curious on people's opinions about some stuff here. I wonder, what do people normally do with try catch stuff? Do you normally put like the whole happy path in it? Even like this is going to throw an exception. We're not going to catch it here, so we're going to rely on it being caught somewhere else. Or do you only wrap the try around like the first line of code that might trigger this error? You know what I mean? So some people might do this, for example, because this try catch is actually only concerned about this charge thing. And I guess if you even wanted to, you could do like put this up here, so you could try around the payment gateway charge and then do this stuff. But then you also might end up with like multiple try catches, which kind of feels gross to me. So I've personally always liked the approach of putting these failure cases that happen because of exceptions like in a set of multiple catches at the bottom. But the stuff that should go in the try, that I don't have as many strong opinions about. So I'll be curious what other people are doing. I think I kind of like putting everything in it. Like if there's going to be a try, kind of make that the whole thing. So like this is basically, the happy path. And if I wanted to, I could extract this whole thing out to a new method. So I don't know. Curious what other people do. Okay, so that's still green. The whole file is still green. Let's do similar stuff for other keys. So email is required. So we'll do example soft here. Okay, so we got an error. Let's make sure that we mark email as required. Yep, so that's green. Let's make sure that the email is an email. Must look like an email. I don't think it's really possible to do perfect email validation, but it's worth doing a little bit of it. So we get a 201 because it was created successfully. So let's make sure that's an email. It all bubbles up. If you have a try catch and you're only catching a certain exception class, any other exceptions that are thrown will fall through. Cool. So let's see. Where does that leave us? So we got company name is required. Email address is required. Email address must be, an email. Payment token is required. So let's try that one. So let's say payment token is required. So if this comes through as, I think it'll come through as null realistically because it's not going to be a form field. So let's make it null since that's the most realistic sort of simulation of what's going to happen in the real world. And we'll make sure that this has an error. Undefined index errors. So company name is required. So this is sort of just like frontline validation, making sure that at least the pieces are there. And then this is like you're token was invalid and couldn't actually be charged, sort of hardcore. We really hit Stripe validation. Okay, so that's green now. All right, so let's commit that as just sort of basic request validation. Add basic request validation for purchasing sponsorships. And I'm going to create a GitHub repo for this in case my computer just dies right now. So if anyone doesn't know about this, GitHub has a CLI tool called Hub. They recommend aliasing your Git to be Hub, but for some reason I don't do that. I can't remember what prompted me to not do it, but I just keep it installed as Hub. But I can do like hub create -p, and this is going to create a private GitHub repo called Adam Wathan sponsorship now. And if I go to my real GitHub, you can see I've got a new empty private repo here, which is cool. And then I can just do like git ul, which is an alias I have for like push new branches. I think of it as git upload. And now I have all my stuff set up here. So download that tool if you don't already use it. It's really cool. All right, so next thing is going to be slots must belong to current sponsorable. Okay, so let's just duplicate this one. We'll just say test cannot sponsor another sponsorable's slots. It's kind of weird sounding, but it's fine. So we'll have full stack radio sponsorable. We'll have other sponsorable. Will be, what would be a fun sponsorable name? We'll use Laravel News for my good old friend Eric Barnes. And we'll make this slot belong to the other sponsorable, but we'll try to purchase it through the full stack radio sponsorships. So we'll make sure that we do payment gateway, valid test token, and yep, so that's okay. And what do we want the response to be? It's not really like a validation error. Like typically I would do like a 404 because like the resource isn't found if the resource was included in the URL. But in this case, it's not included in the URL. It's just a parameter. So like a not found doesn't really seem correct. Although that is probably what Laravel would do if I relied on like find or fail, but there's not like get or fail. So I'm going to be doing some weird things here, actually. Yeah, this is actually an interesting situation because think about what would happen in our current code. We look for a sponsorable slot. We just do a where in, but then we don't do any sort of like check, right? Like basically what we'd have to do is a check here to make sure that the number of slots that were found matched the number that was requested. So if you're looking for 3 and we did a where in, but we only got 2 back, like that would be no good, right? So I wonder what people normally do. If it's fine to do a not found, a 404, even if it's not part of the URL that's causing it to be a 404. It's kind of interesting, kind of an interesting situation. So let's just think through what we want it to do. We could change this if we want, but why don't we browse some HTTP status codes? So you could do like a bad request. That's like your typical sort of simple situation. And I don't know. Let's go with bad request, because the other thing about this is this situation should be impossible from the UI. It'll only happen with someone like making curl requests or something like that. So I don't really care about showing them really great error messages anyways. So as long as we get a 400 and you know what I think we're going to do too? Let's I'm going to have multiple slots because I want to kind of simulate this situation where, like, I want to make sure that if one of them isn't valid, like the whole request basically fails, you know? So if someone tries to sponsor 3 episodes and 2 of them are fine, but one of them belongs to someone else, I just want the whole thing to error. So basically we want all 3 of these slots. So slot A, B, and I guess there was no benefit to using the multi-cursors there. Other slot should all be like this. So let's just run this. It's going to fail because it succeeded. So can you do like a find many? Is that a Laravel? Does has many extends has one or many? Has one or find? Basically, I'm hoping to find like an existing Laravel method that will find me. Actually, does has one or many extend belongs to many? No. I want to be able to do like find or fail on like an array of IDs. And yeah, because otherwise this code is going to get like really gnarly. But that's okay. So let's just get it passing and then think about cleaning stuff up after. Okay, so if we wanted to just be like really naive or really just dirty about this and not really stress it too much, we could say like if slots count does not triple equal count request sponsorable slots, return. You know what? We could actually just do like abort if, or abort unless slots count. And I think abort unless can take like a response now as an argument. Abort if, can that do it? Abort can, I thought. Or is this in a version of Laravel that has not been? Yeah, okay, so this will work. So we can actually pass through a response now. But I guess in this case, I only really care about the status code, so that's fine. So, I mean, this is dirty, but expected status code 400, but got 201. So that's kind of interesting to me. Let's see what we actually get here. Okay. Oh, because, yeah, duh, I'm stupid. We are not scoping this search by the sponsorable. So if we look at the sponsorable, it has slots. So we can just do sponsorable slots wherein get. Okay, so that passes, but I'm really not stoked about this code. But I also cannot for the life of me think of a really obvious way to make it better immediately. The whole weird problem about like having a scoped request that goes to this slug, including this list. I mean, you know what a good solution actually probably would be, although it is potentially wasteful, is to write a custom validation rule. So let's keep this like this for a second, and we'll commit it. Make sure the whole suite's passing. Slots to sponsor must belong to the current sponsorable. I realize that we're also missing like basic validation for the slots thing, right? So why don't we add something here where we'll say sponsorable slots is required. So sponsorable slots comes in as null. Then we expect a 422, which we didn't get. So let's add that here. Okay, so that's green. We also want to make sure that sponsorable slots must be an array. So if we say not an array, then we get an error. So I think Laravel supports that, right? If we go Laravel docs validation, available validation rules, field under validation must be a PHP array. Okay, so we can just say array. And man, I haven't done like array validation in Laravel basically ever. Because can't you do like all sorts of crazy stuff with making sure that each element is a certain thing? Yeah, so okay, so this makes me realize there's a bunch of other validation that we basically need to do. So sponsorable slots must how do I want to say this? At least one sponsorable slot must be provided. So if we pass through an empty array, like we would want this to fail. Oh, and it does already, so that's cool. So I guess the required handles that, but I think I like having that test just for peace of mind anyways. Then I think we want to say sponsorable slots must be like, basically we could do like an exists check, you know what I mean? Like we do want them to be unique because you don't want someone to be able to sponsor the same thing twice. So maybe we should just write that anyways. Sponsorable slots must be unique. So if we just say slot get key and we get two of those, well then we should expect an error. So we can say sponsorable slots dot star. Received a 500. Is that not how you do that? Oh yeah, that's not what unique is for. So this test is still worth having, but how we're going to implement it is tricky. Basically, I think the solution is going to be to add a new validation rule here. Why don't we start by making it like a function validation rule? Attribute value fail. And we can kind of just do the work here, then maybe extract it to a separate object. It's going good. So if I want to make sure that they're unique, man, some of this stuff feels like overkill. Let's think through. Like, it does make sense that we want to make sure that they all belong to the current podcast. We want to make sure that you aren't paying for the same one twice, because that's no good. There's going to be a race condition problem that sucks that we might have to deal with later, but we can do that as another screencast in a couple weeks or something. It's never going to actually happen. Okay, so we have to make sure that they're unique. So one easy way to do that is just to say, like, if value collect value unique. What am I doing? That looked weird. Unique counts does not triple equal. Then we want to fail with basically a message saying you cannot sponsor the same slot more than once. Does that get past that? The given data was invalid. Okay. Running the wrong file. Okay, so kind of dirty, but that will work for that case. Now, you don't actually have to return the value. It's all works out. Okay, so now for this one, where we make sure that the returned slots equals the number of found slots. I mean, that's just like a hack to basically check that the sponsorable slots all belong to the sponsorable ID, right? So another way that we could solve that problem, let's just run this whole file. So we have a failure on sponsorable slots must be an array. So I wonder why this is failing. So that's kind of grim. So what's happening here is basically it's not an array, and therefore I can't call count on it, which means this validation error just errors in a weird way, which sucks because it means I sort of have to like duplicate the validation rule. How do you do the bail stuff? Sometimes you may wish to... Okay, so in theory, if I do this... Okay, all right, that's cool. So we bail unless we get through that. So now if I wanted to, I could do this same check up here. Which I think is smarter because it sucks to have like validation here. Essentially, validation happens in here. It's all just spread out, which is really not nice. So instead of doing this count on this list, I think what we actually want to do is let's move the sponsorable fetching up here because I think that kind of makes sense anyways. Because if you think about it, a lot of the time, this would happen as like a route model binding thing, right? So it kind of should happen first. So I don't know. That actually kind of makes me like the idea of basically moving all this stuff outside the try, which is probably... I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so if we have the sponsorable, then here we can basically just write some code here to double check that all the slots actually belong to that sponsorable. Now, part of me wants to like do this and write this code up here so that I have access to the slots. But that doesn't really make any sense to do it in this closure then because I'm getting the value here, which is kind of funky, right? Like I should be doing that check before I ever actually use this to do anything else. Otherwise, what am I going to do with this value if I'm just going to write a use statement to pull in the slots and use them there? So this is what I meant when I said it kind of sucked that I have to sort of do an unnecessary database query, it feels like, because I feel like I need to do a check now to double check that all of these exist underneath the sponsorable, but I don't want to fetch them from the database twice for no reason, which is a bummer. And I can't think of another way to do it. But basically, like that naive approach would be to write this same code up in here, and then basically say I could do this same check, right? I could say if slots count does not triple equal that, fail, saying you can only... I mean, it's kind of weird that I'm even doing it as a validation error. Like, I kind of preferred that it was a 400 in some ways. Because it's just like your request is like a dumpster fire. So what am I missing here? Is there a better way to do this? Like, I think it makes sense to sort of do it as like it makes sense to do it as a validation rule. That's fine. Okay, so we'll do it this way for now. Maybe we can come up with a way to write this query in a way that just kind of tells us immediately instead of having to like resort to this gross count stuff. Yeah, I don't want to fetch every single ID back from the database. So like if someone has like, I mean, performance wise, does it really matter? It just seems gross to fetch like 500 records back and do that array check. Form request using authorize method to confirm that the sponsor owns the slots being purchased. Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. Like, could you think of it as more of like an authorization thing than a validation thing? And I think that maybe is true. Yeah, I think I actually kind of... I wonder, thinking of it as an authorization problem, is that a smarter way to think about it? It kind of makes sense because that's typically what you would do for like a lot of other stuff that's related to related models, and I've definitely written code like that in the past. Yeah, I don't know, thinking about it. So I really don't like form requests, so I'd probably just do it in the controller. I'm just trying to think where you would do it, because most of the time you do authorization before validation. And the tricky thing with that is that in this case, I need to do the validation before the authorization, because doing the authorization depends on being able to safely run code that makes assumptions about the structure of the data in the request. So if I run the authorization first, but someone passes in a string instead of an array for the sponsorable slots, then the whole thing is going to like come crashing down, and I have no way to prevent that unless I basically duplicate that validation. Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. It's so funny how even like the simplest apps have just like weird little problems that are just make you write gross code. But I think we might be able to come up with something. You can only sponsor here's another question to the audience, naming related. I've been trying to think of like what's a word that I could use in the UI that represents a podcast or a newsletter, for example. And I can't think of one. So let's say you can only sponsor slots it doesn't even have to be human readable, because no one should ever see this. Part of me just wants to like fail with no error. That's why like the 400 kind of felt better in some ways, because I could just like error that the whole request is messed up. You know what I mean? But it sucks that I can't just do that first before the validation, because then I don't know that it's an array. Let's just say you can only sponsor slots with the same you can only sponsor slots that you can only sponsor one. I don't know, whatever. Sponsor slots have mismatched parents. I don't know. It can be programmery, I guess. Kind of sucks though. I'm not happy about that. What do we get now? So I wonder why I'm getting errors on like every other test all of a sudden. Undefined variable sponsorable. Oh, okay. Use sponsorable. Undefined variable slots. So yeah, this is that gross thing where basically I have to go down here and duplicate that logic, which is fine to get things passing, but is admittedly sad. Okay, so that's this test now. So here we can just change this to be a validation test. Okay, so I mean, everything's working, but the code is obviously a disaster. So I'm just trying to think if there's like a way to avoid this duplication, or like I kind of feel like this code all kind of belongs together. And maybe we can move some stuff to something else. Yeah. That's not a bad idea. If we do a count here, I mean, that feels like a less a less wasteful operation. Then we do some horrible thing like slot count just because the line length is really long. Yeah, it's just too bad that I can't think of like a really easy way to do this check without like a lot of duplication, or without, it's just like this query duplication stuff kind of sucks. Man, my voice is going a little bit, I think. So it's not the end of the world, but it kind of is really gross. Yeah, really a bummer. Like if I moved it into like a custom validation rule object, I don't think I would hate it too much. But it just kind of feels like unfortunate. Like maybe I would actually not hate it as much if, like maybe all I need to do to not hate it is to write a method like slots. Now this sucks because of the duplicate query thing, equals sponsorable find slots, you know, like something like this. This is actually an interesting approach. So what do you guys think if I wrote a method like this and I made it kind of like behave kind of like this, you know, like find slots or fail sort of thing, then I could have this like throw an exception. It could kind of be responsible for that validation logic. You know, so it could do like the query. It could find out that it failed. Then I could throw an exception, basically. It's just kind of funky because if I throw a model not found exception, I'm going to get a 404 by default. So I might need to try and be smarter about, or I might need to come up with a custom exception or something like that. But I think I do like this better, where it's the job of the sponsorable to make sure that it finds me the right stuff. I just don't know what it should return, what it should throw. Like, what does there find many? It's weird that there's no like find many or fail. You know what I mean? What does this do? Find or fail, you can pass a array. If count. Is this actually just going to work? I'm kind of curious what happens here. Slots. Is this I kind of feel like there's a feature of Laravel that I didn't know about. I think you can call find or fail with an array, which might be the solution to a lot of our problems here. Let's just see what happens, I guess, if we run this one. Yeah, 404 came back. So, you know what? I think I'm okay with just throwing a 404 because of the fact that, first of all, no one should be seeing this in the UI. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely nicer. So if we run this whole file, we're going to get some errors at the end here because we got a 404 instead of a 422. So if we just do like a 404, I mean, I think I'm okay with that, honestly. And then it kind of makes me wonder too, looking at the code there, it was doing some checks of like unique stuff. So if you look at find or fail, it says if it was an array, then they count the result, and then they count the array unique IDs. So that's basically to make sure that if I look for I guess what I'm curious about is, do I even need this? Which I think I probably still do. Failed to find a validation error because it probably came back with a 201. So is there a way to validate in Laravel? There's got to be like a unique array validation rule. Like, it's kind of blows my mind that there's not. So I guess we just roll with the one that we had. Okay, so in theory, we don't actually have to do this validation after this, but I think it's probably still the right call. But it makes me feel better maybe about just doing this again. Now this is quite a messy looking control action still, but we're green, so maybe we just roll with it. That's a good find though. I'm glad that I learned about that. I wonder how long that's been around. So slots must belong to current sponsorable. We also did slots must be unique. Okay, so the other thing that sucks is that we have even more stuff to go through here. So purchasing episodes that can't be purchased. So, I mean, actually that should be not too hard. It's only going to be one word that we add to the actual implementation. Okay, so cannot sponsor slots that are already sponsored. So let's say we try and do 2 slots. One of them has a purchase ID and one of them doesn't, or a sponsorship ID. So we'll create a sponsorship. Yeah, I guess you're right that I don't technically have to do that validation. And the person will just only get charged for the 2 episodes. So maybe a better way to do it. It feels like you should just error the request, but I see what you're saying. Like, there's actually not going to be a bug if I get rid of this. It's still going to only charge them for each episode 1 time. I think I want to fail the request if it has duplicate slot IDs, but maybe not. I don't know. The code is simpler without it. Seems like a mistake on the end user's part if they have duplicate slot IDs, but yeah, I mean, I can see how, for example, if I comment all this out now, and maybe we should make a fail to find a validation error on line sponsorable slots must be unique. So really what we would want to just do is just verify that I mean, okay, why don't we just run this test? We do like 100 versions of slot C and it still passes. So they still got charged the same amount. Yeah, so I think if anything, I would want to write an explicit test that said, you know, customers won't be double charged if they try to purchase the same sponsorship twice in the same request. But let's just keep it for now. I can revisit that later. But before I forget, let's make a commit, since we were able to simplify that stuff a little bit. So we'll keep that crap for now. Add additional validation rules for sponsorable slots. I don't know. Kind of weak, but it's okay. Okay, so this test cannot sponsor slots that are already sponsored. So we're going to be trying to purchase a sponsorship for slot A and slot B. Slot A is available, but slot B is not. So add a unique constraint across the slot and purchaser IDs. I mean, yeah, I'm not too worried about like the duplicate stuff in. You sort of can't, because then someone will get charged before that happens. Because of, like, either you create the stuff first and then charge the person, or you charge the person first and then create the stuff. And I would like to do it in a way where if I charge the person and then it fails to create for whatever reason, I don't want to have to like automatically go back and undo the charge, or vice versa, where if I create it first, try to charge them and the charge fails, then I have to go back and delete the sponsorship. Like, I don't know, that just seems like a hassle. But yeah, I mean, there's got to be other solutions, but I think we're just going to try and chug along here because we only got a few hours left before I want to be done this for the day. And we still haven't even written a line of HTML. So, cannot sponsor slots that are already sponsored. So, I think we're going to get a 404 here. That's how we're going to set this up because we're going to rely on like a query scope. So slot B. So make sure that this sponsorship didn't get modified and that no charges happened. Okay, so we get an error because it succeeded, which is no good. So I think all we have to do here is go slots, sponsorable, find or fail. Fail asserting that 1 matches expected 0. That's interesting. So is this still returning 1? Even though even if the database calls are transactional, I mean, charging Stripe is not a database call, so I can't just undo that transaction. I mean, I could undo all the created stuff if the Stripe call fails. So that would be one way to do it with a transaction for sure. I don't know. We'll see. We'll worry about that eventually because there are like race condition problems that are somewhat related to that I have to deal with anyways. But yeah, what I'm worried about right now is it seems like our current solution is still finding okay, if I run this, failed asserting that 1 matches expected 0 on 335. But why is that happening? I should be getting this DD. Oh, because we're not hitting that point. And there is one sponsorship, so that's okay. And we can rely on exception handling. Okay, so it's fine. Whole test suite is okay. My line height is set to it's font size 16 and then 6 and 6. All right, so test cannot sponsor slots that are already sponsored. Push that up. Okay, so charge is not created if any validation fails. That's actually, we've been testing that the whole time, so that's good. Refactor how description is determined. So that was this part here where I was kind of trying to think like, it sucks that we're creating this here, but for now, I think it's fine. We can always refactor it later. So one thing that I would like to change here is there's a bit of duplication where this happens. We do slots, sum price, slots, sum price. To me, the sponsorship should be based on the value of the successful charge, not like whatever we sent in. Like, of course, they're going to be the same. But as like when you think about the mental model of, okay, a sponsorship was created, how much were they charged? I want to actually check how much were they charged, not how much were they supposed to be charged, even though it's actually the same value. So I think a good way to do this would be to have payment gateway charge return a charge and then use the charge amount here to remove that duplication. So I think this is going to fail because I don't think we're returning the charge, call the member function amount on null. But if we go to the fake payment gateway, if here we return tap new charge function function charge I wonder if push already just returns it. I wouldn't be surprised. No, it doesn't. Okay, so perfect. So now if we run this, green, green. Okay, so that removes a little bit of that duplication. So now everything here kind of feels not too terrible. I think there's opportunity to clean up this code a bit still, but in general, like we fetch the kind of parent root model for the whole request, which I think is the right kind of first chunk of a controller. We do some validation on the request, right? So that's kind of like its own thing. And then basically what we're doing is fetching the slots that are supposed to get purchased, doing the purchasing, creating a sponsorship, and then updating each one of those slots to be associated with that sponsorship. So I think that's not too terrible. I think for the sake of expediency and trying to get through like some of the other stuff we want to do, I think I'm probably going to move on. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking instead of doing the Stripe stuff right now, I think I'd like to why don't we just use the fake payment gateway to build the app? We'll build the whole thing with the fake interface, like the fake implementation of the interface. Get it all working with the front end and all that stuff. Get that all done. And then after we have that done, if we still have time, then we'll try and drive out the real implementation of the Stripe thing, and then we can kind of demo the whole thing and see it all actually working. So it's about 1 o'clock right now. This stream has been about an hour and 15 minutes. So why don't we take a break for maybe like a little bit longer this time, so maybe I can grab a bite to eat quick, like 15 or 20 minutes. And then we'll jump back on and get into a bunch of Tailwind stuff. So we'll build out all the Tailwind templates next. Maybe we can do that in one stream. And then after that, we will do all the Vue stuff and like the Stripe elements stuff and stuff like that. And then we'll work on the real Stripe payment gateway. So thanks for checking this one out, and I'll see everyone in like 15 minutes or so.